Baruch Hashem, we've made quite a few lectures, thousands of lectures, thousands of short clips, thousands of ways to get close to Am Israel, get Am Israel close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, get the world close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And at times I would talk about different things. Sometimes it will be halacha, sometimes musal, sometimes hashkafa, sometimes a combination thereof, answering questions, questions about the different midrashim, different confusions, ideology, different things that are happening in the world, try to get people to stop being crazy, expose the wicked people that are really crazy, but nonetheless no one sees it until we bring it out. So we've done, Baruch Hashem, we've done. But there's one thing that I've tried to teach. I've tried. And I've had even a couple of lectures about it, I think. If my memory serves me right. But the reality is that you really can't teach this. There's one thing that I can't teach you. And it doesn't matter how many of my lectures you've watched, and it doesn't matter how loyal of a student you are, or a friend, or a follower, or even an enemy. It doesn't matter. I can't teach. There's one thing I can't teach you, and don't worry, it's not Kabbalah or the other things. The time will come for everything. There's one thing I can't teach you. One thing that it's really impossible to teach. And that's mesirut nefesh. Self-sacrifice. You can tell people about it. You can tell them stories about it. Personal stories, stories of tzaddikim that have done it, different examples, theorize to different situations and circumstances. But the truth be told is that you cannot teach mesirut nefesh. You can't convince somebody to sacrifice themselves, sacrifice their time, sacrifice their livelihood. You can't teach somebody to do such a thing. You can't teach or convince somebody to do it because self-sacrifice is not a one-time thing, usually. Self-sacrifice is a lifestyle. Self-sacrifice is an ideology that is an addition to your current ideology. It's like the extra credit, the little extra superpower that some people possess and everyone would love to have. Self-sacrifice is one of those things where you either have it or you don't. You either are willing to sacrifice, thank you very much, or you're not willing to sacrifice. There's no way that you can teach somebody about self-sacrifice and thereby that person says, okay, now that I know what it is, I'm going to do it. That person may hear your stories, may like the things you say and the examples, but when push comes to shove, it's either in them or it's not. And even if they're able to do it one time, still doesn't mean that they're living a life of mesirut nefesh. Because making a one-time sacrifice could simply mean you went crazy for a moment, or you simply weren't thinking, or a lot of other different things. Self-sacrifice is not a one-time thing. Self-sacrifice, which in Hebrew in Sfat HaKodesh is called mesirut nefesh, is something you program into your neshama that this is the only way to be. This is why the Rambam writes that when somebody makes a donation, it's not necessarily a good indication of whether they're generous or not if they made a single large donation. If they made if they make regular donations, then that shows their generosity. But if they made a one-time donation, it's a very large donation, it's not necessarily an indication that they're generous. Could simply be they went crazy that one day. Could simply be they had, excitement of the moment, but the next day they go back to being a Scrooge. The next day they can go back to being a stingy little sting, and they won't even want to share a bottle of water with you. The one that's generous typically does it regularly. But again, just because somebody donates regularly doesn't mean that they're generous. Why? Because it also has to be relative. If a person that has, a few $100,000 in a bank donates, $1 a day, he's not generous. He's actually a very arrogant, stingy person. Stingy for obvious reasons. Donating $365, it's not exactly a relative to the amount of money that he has. So obviously he's very stingy. But arrogant because he's really only doing it not because he actually believes that this $1 is helping anybody, but rather he wants to give himself the good feeling of someone that's generous, and rather he wants to get the attention of someone that gives by giving every day. Every day, the person that he gives to says thank you, or the company sends him an automatic email that says thank you, and he likes it. It gives him a good feeling. But this is unfortunately not a very good indication of his generosity. But the Rambam does combine the two things, where he says that if you want to overcome stinginess, where you just have one of those diseases, spiritual diseases, where you're very stingy, then get yourself acclimated to giving by giving a little bit every day. Decide a certain amount that you can give, that you could let yourself part with, and divide it up into small portions and give it up over a period of time. If let's say it's $100, then divide it up into, let's say 100 different homeless people, or 50 different homeless people, and so on. Sometimes I see people donate to our organization where they'll donate $1, in staka, or sometimes maybe they'll push themselves and get $1.50. And again, if this is truly what you have, then there's obviously no harm in doing so. It's a very good idea, but many times it's not. Many times people donate that $1 just because they feel like it's a staka box. Now, for my recommendation, if you only have $1, that's all you have to your name. Keep it to yourself. Bezat Hashem, Hashem will give you more blessing. Don't make yourself homeless. Don't make yourself so poor. If you do have a lot more, and you simply can't allow yourself to give more than $1, then give the dollar to the local synagogue. Give the dollar to the local homeless person. Don't donate it online. And the reason why is because there are minimum charges that each merchant bank that processes the credit cards charges. And by the time that dollar goes through all of the different banks, almost half of it is gone. That this is not because they take 50% of every transaction. Quite the opposite. Usually the banks take somewhere around 3%, maybe 4%, but that's it. They don't take 50%. But they also have a minimum, and that minimum usually is somewhere around 40 or 50 cents, which means that if you're donating $1, that $1 is not what is actually getting to that beneficiary, let's just say. But the point being is that if someone is going to try to get themselves to sacrifice, to change their ways, to help others change their ways, they have to know that sacrifice is required for all of us. It's not necessarily a suggestion, but it's just one of those things where you can't teach somebody. They have to simply be willing to do it. You can tell them theories, you can tell them stories, but this is not one of those things where I teach you the halacha and therefore you'll know exactly how to light the menorah or build the sukkah. Self-sacrifice is not like that.